Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to see how we can install our Blender software. There are two ways in which we can install Blender. The first way is via the Blender website, and the second way is via Steam. So we're going to show you how to download from the Blender website first. So as we go into the internet, I'm going to open a new tab, and first of all I'm just going to go Google, and I'm going to type in Blender. Now when you come down, you'll have a website called www.blender.org. You're going to click on that, and it takes you to Blender's main website. Now what Blender has at the moment for its website is a very nice layout, gives you all the latest news on different things going on in Blender, how you can get involved, development projects, etc. The most important part of this is this button here. This is your download button, and it tells you the current version that Blender is using. So at the moment it's 2.76b. Once you click on that, it will take you to blender.org/download, and this is where you download Blender. You can download it for either Windows, Mac or Linux, or even as a free BSD, and you have different versions of Blender that you can install. In general, for most modern day computers, you want to download via 64-bit. I don't think too many people will use 32-bit Windows computers now, because that's mainly Vista and older versions of Windows 7. A lot of us do still use Windows 7, but we'll use 64-bit. And what you'll need to do is you'll just go to installer. Don't worry about zip for Windows, because we've got the installer direct, and click. So I'm from England, so I would actually choose the Netherlands one. That's what I did. Or you could choose the USA version. It really doesn't matter which package you pick, they're all the same. For Mac, you would need to download the zip file first, and then unlock the zip file in your settings. So I'm not going to click this because I've already downloaded Blender, so I don't want to download Blender for a second time. But that's how just clicking on any of these buttons will automatically start your installer, and you'll go through the Blender installation process, which is pretty much the same as any other software installation that you would have ever done. Okay, so the second way of downloading Blender is from Steam. Now I'm going to come out of internet, and I'm just going to find my desktop. So if you've got Steam installed, then you can use Steam to download Blender. So I'm going to click on Steam, and I'm just going to enter my password. Just give that a second to load up. Okay, so to find Steam, we obviously have to go to Store, and then we're going to go to the search bar, and we're going to type in Blender, and we'll see Blender comes up at the top. Click. Now for me, Blender's already in my Steam library because this is how I originally downloaded it. But this is where you can install Blender via Steam, and it's absolutely free, both via the Blender website and via Steam's system. You can download Blender for absolutely nothing. I've never had to pay a penny for anything related to Blender. That's one of the advantages of it being a community website. So those are two ways in which you can download Blender. Once you've downloaded Blender, we can get started with the tools that we need to complete the course and become Blender artists. Thanks guys, and I hope to see you in the next lecture. Hi guys, so this course is going to be divided up into 6 sections. The first section is what we're in now, which is the intro section. This just goes over the housekeeping rules of what you would do on any course in Udemy. So we're going to go through section assets, in this lecture how the course is structured, what you're going to gain from this course, etc. In section 2, we're going to be looking at navigation. Now, you may think, oh, this is going to be a short section. It's going to show me just how to basically click and select. Blender's a lot more than that. It's a 3D development software, so 3D models are being developed in Blender. Therefore, the navigation system is a little bit more complex than what it would be if you was using Paint to do some drawings on your Microsoft laptop, for example. So there's a lot to go through with navigation and a load of different ways in which you can select, deselect objects. A whole ton of different, what we call Blender panels, which you can go to and from to do different things. So you've got Blender panels for modeling, Blender panels for UV mapping, for animations, for creating textures and materials. The list goes on and on and on. Then in section 3, we go on to the modeling phase. Now this is where we will begin to actually create models in Blender, and we're going to learn how to do that. We're going to look at things like different modes. So we've got things like object mode, where we can select objects as a whole. We've got edit mode, where we can select a part of an object and we can edit it. We also have modifiers, which are extensions of tools that we can use for modeling. We're going to learn what these modifiers do. So we're going to be able to solidify objects. We're going to be able to create arrays, which is basically duplicating objects. We're going to learn how to add and delete parts of an object. If I could tell you everything that we were going to do in this course, in this one lecture, we'd probably go over the 20-minute mark easily on modelling alone. There's so much that we can do there. Then in section 4, we've got textures, shortened for textures and materials. In this section, you're going to learn how to take the models you've created and you're going to be able to apply textures to them, materials to them. And I'm not just talking about colours. I'm going to show you something called the node editor, which is going to be your go-to place for creating real lifelike material textures. You can create things like the metal used on cooking pans, for example, or ceramic bowls. Actually creating ceramic objects is very easy in Blender. So too is making objects out of glass. You can make glass materials very easily, and we're going to learn how to do these sort of things in section 4. In section 5, we're going to move on to something called rigging. Now, you may not have heard of rigging before, but basically rigging comes before animation specifically. For a more detailed object that has a lot of geometry. So for example, if you were to create a human being and you wanted it to move and animate like a human being, you would have to begin rigging your model. Rigging is basically, to summarize, creating a skeleton or an armature, and this armature is used to control how your model moves. Once you've done that, we're going to move on to animation. Animation, fairly straightforward. You're going to learn how to create video animations using objects. We're going to start by looking at animating something called Mr. Cube. So we're going to animate a cube object, very basic animations. And then we're going to do a little bit more advanced stuff in animations, such as actually being able to create a human animation. So section 5 and 6 in particular will link together, because in section 5 you're going to actually create a human rig, and then in section 6 you're going to animate that rig. Very exciting. So that is what you can expect from this course. It's a very brief outline, but there are several hours of content in this course. Several hours on modelling alone, I would say, because there's just so much to learn in the modelling aspects. The course is also structured so we give you a series of challenges. For example, by the end of the modelling phase alone, you should have created a minimum of 20 different objects before even considering moving on to textures. By the end of this course, you should have completed at least 50 different models. A lot of this will be homework, but all of the knowledge necessary to create all of these objects will be covered in this course. Make a note that this does not cover every single solitary bit about Blender. It is a comprehensive course for beginners, so this will take you through all of the most important stuff. So the most commonly used modifiers have been selected. They'll be included in the modelling course. The primary ways of texturing, rigging, animations, all of these will be covered in detail, but I'm not going to go too over the top. After all, this course is primarily for those of you who are entering Blender or 3D animation or 3D modelling for the first time, or you have entered 3D modelling but you don't know too much about it. But there we go, guys. That's how the course is going to run, and I hope to see you inside. So guys, you've downloaded this course, you're ready to start. Or maybe you haven't downloaded this course and you're just looking at this as a preview video. This lecture is just going to quickly go through what you should have before you start this course on Blender. And there are 3 things that I recommend you have. The first is fairly obvious, a PC. This can be either a Windows PC, a Macintosh, or a Linux device. But as long as it's a PC, then you're good to go. Second recommendation is a full-sized keyboard. And what I mean by full-sized keyboard is if you look at my image of this keyboard, you'll see I've highlighted the number pads. Smaller keyboards do not have this number pad at the side, and I'm very quickly going to go over why this is important. In Blender, there are different ways in which we can navigate the view. Sometimes we want to view our object in 2 dimensions instead of 3. Remember, Blender is a 3D modelling software. The numbers on the number pad will help us view our objects from different angles in 2 dimensions. This will be particularly effective when we are looking to work and to model in 2 directions rather than 3. So, my advice, if you don't have a full-size keyboard, if you're using a Chromebook or a notebook, or I don't have a Mac, maybe one of the Macs which are smaller size don't have number pads at the side, then I would advise you get a USB keyboard to attach to your laptop or your PC so that you can use that numpad. However, Blender does have a number pad emulator, and this emulator will allow you to perform the actions that would normally be assigned to the number pad and perform those same actions with the numbers across the top of the keyboard itself, on top of the letters, the ones you'll use most of the time in your everyday lives. While this is obviously very handy, these buttons have their own original functionality, which involves moving objects in between layers. So we can have our number pads and our views switched over to these numbers along here. However, it's much more preferable to just get a full-size number pad. It's not vital, but it is recommended. Now, the last thing that you will need is a 3-button mouse. And your touchpad isn't a 3-button mouse, that's your touchpad. You shouldn't have a 2-button mouse, you should have a 3-button mouse. What I mean by a 3-button mouse is a mouse with a scroll wheel. Now, for most modern day mouses, in fact going back many years, the scroll wheel is also a 3rd button. and this scroll wheel will be crucial to navigating Blender. Once again, we do have an emulator in Blender that allows us to emulate the 3-button mouse on our touchpad. However, this is very awkward. I think anyone who's ever used that emulator will agree that it's very awkward to use, and 10 out of 10 people who have used both the emulator and an actual 3-button mouse, every single one of them will tell you, get the 3-button mouse. Because you want to start off as simple as possible, and if you don't have a 3-button mouse, then I'll be very honest, it's going to be very difficult to do something as simple as navigating in Blender, and I'm going to show you that in future lectures. So, to summarise, if I was to give in terms of importance, so 5 stars would be extremely important, 1 star would be not important at all. PC, 5 stars because you can't have Blender without a PC. 3-button mouse, 5 stars. Because it's so difficult to operate Blender without the 3-button mouse. It makes it so much easier. Number pads, I'd say 3 stars. It's not crucial for you to get a keyboard with a full-size number pad, but it is recommended. So, with that information on board, guys, make sure you have all the stuff you need before advancing in the course, or purchasing the course if you haven't already purchased it. And I hope to see you in the future lectures. So, I'm going to very quickly show you where you can find your section assets. Basically, in Udemy, as instructors, we can give you assets that you can download to help you with the course, or help you with what you'll do after the course. So, I'm just going to show you where you can download these. So, if we go into one of my selected lectures, so this lecture is Changing Your Theme in Blender, which you will soon see in the course, we have a series of icons in the top corner. The current icon displays all of your lectures, and in blue shows what lecture you're currently on. There are circles next to each lecture. If the circle is white, it means that you have not watched that lecture yet. If you have a half moon, so if you have half green, half white circle, then it means that you have watched a part of that lecture, but you have not watched the whole lecture. If the lecture is full green in circle, then it means that you have completed that lecture, which means you've watched it as a whole. Every lecture can have its own downloadable content, so the lectures are where you download the content from, not just the course dashboard, which you can go back to at any time up here. You have to go to the lectures themselves. So this second tab, which currently has nothing in it, but it says there are no available downloads for this lecture. If a lecture has downloadable content from it, that downloadable content will be displayed here. Simply left click the wording, which will appear if it's downloadable, and it will do so automatically. Note that certain downloads are optional in this course and certain downloads are very much advised. For example, due to the nature of this being primarily a beginner's course, although anyone can take it, I'm not going to be creating our human, which we're going to use for our human rig, in the course itself. So the reason why that is because that is at a more advanced level than what I'm aware that many of us will be at once we reach that stage. So a human mesh will be available for download in the appropriate lecture, and then from there you can do whatever you like to that human mesh, but the idea of that human mesh is to help set up a rig from that mesh. There are other downloadable content, so for example, in the UV textures and materials section, I will have downloadable content which shows example objects where detailed materials have been created, and these are merely as an idea to give you ideas of how you can set out different material objects. But there we go, this is where you get your section assets from. Okay, so this lecture really is just to let you guys know what the difference would be between PC, Linux and Mac when using Blender. The answer is short and sweet, there is none. On all three devices, Blender is pretty much identical. Certain pieces of software such as Unity for games creation, you know, it's designed a little bit differently on a Mac to a PC. I know that in Unity, for example, finding the preferences section is completely different on a Mac to what it is on a PC. But there's nothing like that in Blender. It's completely identical no matter what platform it's used on. Even in terms of saving and loading, importing and exporting, anything like that, you still use Blender's own interface to perform those actions, and that remains the same on PC, Linux and Mac. The only time when it's different would be probably when you're looking for something outside of Blender itself. So, for example, say if you're looking to convert something or move something from one folder to another outside of Blender, then obviously you would use your own operating system to do that. But that sort of stuff you'll know how to do anyway. That has nothing to do with Blender itself. So, just thought I'd get that out there. No matter what device you use this on, whether it be a PC, Linux or Mac, Blender, there is, bottom line, absolutely no difference. Hi guys, so this lecture is more of a resource lecture, just to let you know of other things that you can do with Blender. So Blender is a very powerful tool. You can do so many things with it: 3D modeling, 2D modeling, animation, rigging, texturing. But Blender doesn't just work on its own, it's so much more effective as part of a set. You'll need certain resources such as where can you get textures from, places that are dedicated for 2D design, places that are dedicated for games design. Remember, Blender can do so many different things, but the one thing it specialises in is 3D modelling. So what I have is just a couple of suggestions of what you can get, what other pieces of software you can get to further expand your skill set beyond Blender. The first thing that I recommend is going to a website called CG Textures. This is a fantastic website if you want to find a place where you can download a good texture, a good quality texture for absolutely nothing. So you don't have to hand paint the texture yourself, you don't have to download it for £2, £3, £4, whatever. All the textures from CG Textures are free with the free account, and all you need is, as I just mentioned, all you need to do is create an account with them and you get, I think it's 15 downloads per day, I believe, which is fantastic. So I definitely recommend going to CG Textures and just checking that out. Next, you'll need, or I'd recommend, a 2D design software. Now, yes, you can design things in 2 dimensions in Blender, but it's not a familiar way of doing things. I've got 2 here, but I've got 3 recommendations. GIMP is a standalone 2D design platform. It is absolutely fantastic because you can work in layers. It's absolutely free, absolutely fantastic. I would definitely recommend GIMP. Second 2D design software I recommend is Adobe Photoshop. This is probably the strongest 2D design software that you can get, but you are required a subscription fee. So this one costs a little bit. And the last one is not here, but I found it after I did this PowerPoint. The last one is called Krita. That's Krita. If you search for Krita, Krita is basically Blender's two-dimensional sister. So I think, I'm not certain, but they're very similar in how they are produced. And I think they are made by the same community. So I think Krita would probably work best with Blender itself, because I think that's what it was designed to do. Of the three, I would probably recommend Krita. I think Krita is probably the easiest to work with Blender. All three of them allow layers. Any one of the three is a really good choice. So you have GIMP, Adobe Photoshop, or Krita. But just remember that while GIMP and Krita are absolutely free, Adobe Photoshop requires a subscription, and I think it's something like £6 a month. Finally, you'll want, if you're interested in game development, you'll want a game engine. Now, I'll say now that Blender itself has a game engine, but Blender is a 3D modeling software, so the game engine is not the center point of Blender. Therefore, it doesn't receive perhaps as much attention as it would deserve. I would recommend using a more powerful game engine. I would recommend Unity first and foremost. That is the most versatile game engine that you can make. That is my top choice, and plus the free version has absolutely everything you could ever want. My second choice would be Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is a little bit more geared towards fighters and shooters and first person things, but at the same time, you know, it's still a fantastic game engine. My number one recommendation is Unity. My number two recommendation is Unreal Engine. Now, there are actually quite a few more resources that I could throw at you, but let's not overcomplicate things too much. Basically, what I recommend to enhance your skill set, you've got your 3D modeling software in Blender. I would advise making an account with CG Textures to have a source for all your textures. I would recommend Krita for your 2D design software, and Unity for your game creation software. Of course, this is all entirely up to you. If you're not interested in any of this, that's absolutely fine, and we can just continue with the course in Blender. This is, after all, a Blender course. Thanks guys, hope to see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, I'm just going to take you through the course controls and how to use Udemy for this course. So, we're going to go into our example lecture, and you can, just by clicking on the screen, you can play it or pause it at any time you want. There are also several other options, so if we go down here, there's a play and pause button to let you know if your video is in motion. You also have these markers. Now, this marker here will take you back 15 seconds in the video. So the green bar shows where you are in the video relative to how long it is, and you've got the length of the video at the end, plus at what second in the video you're in. So at the moment, I'm at 1 minute in this 8-minute video. So if I press this button here, it's going to take me backwards 15 seconds, and we can see that the screen is changed, and we can see that we are 45 seconds in now instead of 1 minute. Likewise, we can press this button to go forward 15 seconds each time. We can also increase or decrease the speed of our videos. Now, in a lot of videos, there's going to be a lot of me explaining how things work, so I wouldn't really recommend too much in my videos increasing the speed, but you might want to decrease the speed sometimes if you want a really clear view of how something's being done. In addition, we have the volume button. So the higher up this goes, it's currently paused, so you can increase the volume of the lecture in Udemy. Now, for my courses, I use a Blue Yeti microphone. That means the volume can get a bit high. So I recommend keeping this quite low, and on most computers, I recommend a speaker volume of about 30 to 40 for the best hearing experience. Next, we have the choice of quality. Now, because this is a 3D modeling course, and on Blender we've got a lot of text that's visible, so I do recommend using HD quality. Obviously you've got 360, 480, 720, 1080. If your internet connection is able to cope with it, which it should be able to, I would recommend 1080p, just to give you the perfect viewing experience. All of my videos are available in the quality of 1080p. Finally, we have this full screen button here, which if we press once, it takes a minute for Udemy. A little bit slow, this feature, but once it's done that, it will make my video full size. And there we go. So I've now got a full size screen where I can increase or decrease the quality of my video. So I can always go back, and there we go. This button here, which highlights green when I hover over it, is the button to indicate whether or not your lecture has been completed. This should do it automatically in the final few seconds of the video. However, if it does not, and you move on to the next lecture, but you want it to be ticked as completed, just come back to this lecture and you can literally tick this box to make sure that it's completed. Also, we have a button down here which says next lecture. This is another way of taking you straight to the next lecture, regardless of where you are in the video. You also have the previous lecture button, which takes you back one lecture. The course dashboard button will take you back to the main menu for the course. Just as a note, if you find anything that you don't like, anything that you might find inappropriate, I promise you that you won't, but in Udemy's case, you can always report it here. And this button actually makes the sidebar visible and invisible. So if we left click that, the sidebar is now invisible and we've got a much bigger display, and we can always click again to bring it back. So, what if you'd like to give feedback on particular lectures, or if you want to discuss with other members of the Udemy community and myself who are taking the course? Well, there are a couple of places you can do this. So, if we go to the Udemy website, so we're back on our example lecture, the first place which I would recommend is on the lecture itself, in which you might have an issue or question that you want to bring up about that lecture. If you go to the speech bubble icon, you will see it says start a new discussion. So here you can type in a title, and you could say, in that title I would advise you to write perhaps what the question is, or what the a summary of what you're about to say in the box below. So I'm just going to write title, theme, and if I've got a question like, for example, can I create my theme manually? Just as an example. And then I can press post. I'm not going to at this point, but I'll press post, and then that will appear down here. and people will be able to reply to that post. I will be able to reply to that post, and you can post as many things as you want here. So if you've got questions, just place them here and someone will get back to you. Ideally me, maybe someone else in the community can help you. We also have a few Microsoft Word style options. So we have bold, italic. You can create ordered lists, unordered lists. You can do links and insert images. This is particularly useful. Basically, if you're having an issue and you're not sure what's going on, you can insert an image. So you can take a screenshot of what you're doing and you can post that screenshot here, and the community and myself, we can have a look to see what the problem is. Or you could do so and you could post what you've done in the discussions as part of the course itself. So there are quite a few times where I might ask you to complete a challenge and then post it in the discussions. So you'd post it here in that specific lecture using insert image. Of course, make sure you know how to make a snapshot of your laptop or your desktop first, and then save it to somewhere you know where you've stored it, and then you can insert that image and people can have a look at what you've done. The second place is if we go to the course dashboard, then we have, at the moment, since the course is currently not live, we have show unanswered discussions, but we have different kinds of discussions. So we have a box here that says add discussion, and here you just click add discussion, and you can, similar to the lectures themselves, you can type in a title and then go into more detail about the query that you have. So this one is for more general purposes. It will also display any discussions from individual lectures. So this is like a global discussion page. But if you have any questions about a specific lecture or the content of a specific lecture, try and use the lectures discussion page first and foremost. We also have an announcements tab, which I will display announcements from, and a students tab that's purely for me. So all you really need to worry is in that part how you can insert discussions. So there we go.